Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at my tier list for the top lane for 11.3. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream. Starts around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night. Usually goes till about 3 or 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. I try to answer every single comment that comes up in the chat. So come by, check it out. And if you like this, be sure to check back every day. I'm going to be adding daily, fresh, new content, guides, tier lists, all that stuff every single day, so come back and check it out, especially when a new patch drops, because I'm going to be doing a new tier list for each role and patch notes every time a patch drops. So be sure to check that out if you want some good in-depth content and not just a 10-minute read a list of patch notes or just here's a visual of strong champs. Right? I try to get in there and give the explanation, and I'm going to try to do it faster as well. I'm going to try to see if I can keep these to 30 minutes or less. We'll see, but that's the goal. Anyways, let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, so top lane is a little tricky. There might be some debate on sort of what's strong. I think that the top three, definitely the Darius, Garen, and Camille that I'll explain. I think pretty much everybody, if it's solo queue, talking about, you know, between silver and platinum solo queue, which is what I'm primarily referencing, it's going to be those. There are some that you might see in pro that are kind of strong, like you're seeing Gnar is pretty good in pro, and Renekton has been pretty good that don't show up there. It's because they take a little bit more skill and timing, and we'll go into why. So just keep in mind that it is going to be a little subjective. Stuff can move around a bit. I like to use a mixture of statistics from solo queue and just kind of deductive reasoning, looking at stats, looking at trending items and the metagame and things like that. So part of it is, looking at the current, statistics and the data in the past, but part of it is also looking towards the future and maybe seeing some stuff that's underappreciated whenever possible. And then part of it's just skill too. Like, if you're an extremely good Irelia or Riven player, obviously she's going to be S tier. But if you're a really terrible Riven player or Irelia player, she's probably going to be, F tier. So there's always going to be that sort of tension as well. Is like, what's kind of the baseline that someone can expect if they are new to a champion versus what's a one trick going to be able to do with that champion. So I'll point out those things as we come to them. Okay. But Darius, I think, is going to be pretty close to number one on almost everyone's tier list in solo queue. He's banned all the time, and for good reason. He's extremely good with a lot of the new items that have come up in the preseason, and a lot of his items have not really been nerfed that much. So this was the patch where they primarily nerfed a lot of the healing items. So they nerfed Sterix, they nerfed Gore Drinker, and they nerfed Ravenous Hydra. Now, he doesn't get Hydra, and he doesn't get Gore Drinker most of the time. He's going to get Stride Breaker, and that's why Garen and Darius are still at the top, because their items didn't get hurt that much. And they do have alternative builds, but I would also argue that Sterix really wasn't hit that hard. It's like 100 shield, but if you read how this thing actually works, a lot of the time, it's going to be giving like an 800 to a 1,000 shield, so losing that extra 100 is maybe 10% off of the shield. It's still going to be a shield for like a third of his health, at the end of the day. And it's just way too effective for how much attack damage and health that it gives. And that's what you'll still see with a lot of these top-end champs. They're still going to use those items even after the nerf. You're still going to see Gore Drinker champs. You're definitely going to see Sterix on almost everybody. And then Ravenous Hydra is still going to be pretty popular too. And those nerfs really did not affect the win rate on most of the champions, unless it was a champion that got all three of those and got a direct nerf. So someone like Olaf or Aatrox is going to get hit a little bit. But the vast majority of champions, if you just get one or two of those items, if they were, at like a 54 or 55% win rate, are still going to be at like a 53. So it just nudged them down a little bit without completely killing them. I know that was kind of what a lot of the all caps videos were saying. Say goodbye to Gore Drinker. Every champion that gets Gore Drinker is going to have a 40% win rate. It's not what happens. It was a really overpowered item, and it got nudged down a little bit. So anyways, Darius, a lot of people have figured out this optimal build for him where you take Ghost and Stride Breaker, and then you can still take Conqueror. I have seen Phase Rush, but I think people are back on that Conqueror train. It's similar, right? Conqueror is picked a lot more, but Phase Rush is still going to be pretty popular. A major advantage of Phase Rush is not just the movement speed, but that it gives you that 75% slow resistance, which is going to be really solid if you're facing tons of slows like Ashe or Anivia or something like that. You might get it. But most of the time, you just want to go with the Conquer because you stack it up and it gives you that extra healing. So most of the time, you do want to go for the Stride Breaker, and it's a bit of a weird item. You don't see it on a ton of champs, but the champs where you do see it, it's usually quite strong. it gives you that extra lunge so you can dash forward towards people, so that little bit more of a gap close, and it slows them for 60% over 2 seconds. So that's going to allow you to stick to them much better. And it only has a 20-second cooldown that's also reduced by ability haste, just like Gore Drinker. So that's going to be very handy. And it has 20 ability haste on it as well. And that's why you'll notice that a lot of these champs that have traditionally been sort of balanced around having longer cooldowns on some key abilities, now there's so much more ability haste that's available in the game for these types of champs, that they're going to be able to really take advantage of that. So like Cho'gath, we'll talk about here in a second, is really loving a lot of this new ability haste that's out there. Now, Darius did get either Trinity Force or Black Cleaver in the past, so, he was already used to having some ability haste, so it doesn't apply as much to him. But just keep an eye on that for some of these other champs we'll talk about. But anyways, gives you the gap closer, and that's really all you need as Darius. If you can stick to them and fight, he's going to beat almost anybody in a 1v1 as long as they don't kite him. Especially very early in the game before people have a ton of items, because he gets so much extra bonus attack damage if he gets 5 stacks on his bleed. They did nerf it a couple of patches ago. They knocked it down by like 10. But if you look at him, if you've never looked at this before, just how much bonus damage he gets off of his passive, it's insane. I didn't read it until they nerfed his attack damage. I think it was on 11.2, and I was like, okay, well, how much does that really matter? Turns out not that much, because near later on in the game, he gets like close to 200 bonus attack damage, which is like 6,000 gold in stats. Why? Why does he get this? Right? So he gets between 20 and 250 bonus attack damage. That's not like a percentage or something. That's a flat amount of bonus attack damage, which is 35 gold each to acquire that normally. So even at level 6, if you get this stacked up, you're getting 2,400 gold. Or no, not 2,400, 1,200 gold. Right? 40 times 35, whatever that is. It's a lot. It's over 1,200, probably close to like 1,500 gold worth of stats. So it's a tremendous amount of value just inherent in this guy, and he also gets a lot of lifesteal off of his sweeping Qs, and then the total damage off of his bleed is really huge as well. And as y'all know, once he applies that bleed to one person, as long as he can just keep reapplying it to other people with Decimate, Crippling Strike, and then getting kills, he gets those chain resets, and the bleed just does a tremendous amount and gives him extra AD, which scales really well with his resets, and so on and so forth. So he just does a ton of damage over time, and true damage. So he's good against squishies when he gets a hold of them, but the key thing here is he's also extremely good against tanks because of that true damage and just how much damage that bleed does over time, and his lifesteal. Really the only answer to him is to hope that you can chain CC him and blow him up or kite him before he gets on you, but it's very, very difficult when he takes Ghost and he has Stridebreaker to do that. So extremely good duelist. If he gets ahead, he can even 1v2 against a lot of junglers if they show up. Because he has the resets, because he can get the bleed stacks and apply 5 stacks to multiple people, and that's going to make him really strong in team fights as well. If you have one of these just kind of CC machine tanks that are really popular in the jungle right now, your Skarners, your Udyrs, or you have like a Rel or a Leona from the bot lane, just anyone that can hold him still for you, they're going to set him up, you're going to knock him down. So tremendously powerful champion, especially at Platinum and lower. Where people aren't going to be able to trade properly and punish him in lane. You can do it. You can beat him as something like a Riven or a Camille or something like that in lane. If you get ahead, you can stomp him. But it's very, very difficult to do that, and you're going to have to outplay him. He's going to be, when you're talking about people that are just kind of like an average skill level at the game, he's going to be the ace up the sleeve. He's going to beat almost everything at just a normal level of play. So super strong champion, that's why he's top for me. So I think that you're still going to get Stridebreaker and then probably Sterix, although you can get Dead Man's Plate, which is going to make it even more difficult for people to kite you out once you get the Dead Man. So if you're going to be doing a lot of team fighting and you need to be the primary tank, I think Sterix is going to be the go-to second item, and then Dead Man's is going to be better if you're split pushing or if you're just really far ahead and you just want to make sure that you stick on them, and then whichever one you don't get second, you'll just get third. I have also seen some success with Gargoyles, which was buffed a little while ago, which is obviously going to be super good in team fights. It's going to make you basically unkillable, but you're still going to be putting out insane damage. So that's the whole thing about Darius too, is he doesn't really need any true damage items because he gets so many thousands of gold effect off of the bleed, and he does true damage, right? So his baseline damage is so high, he doesn't even have to build any damage items, right? Outside of Stride Breaker, which is mostly just for the utility of being able to jump on someone and slow them, right? It doesn't have that much proc damage. So yeah, just obnoxious champion, super, super powerful. Definitely play him. Now, he is banned a lot, but if he's not banned, he's a good pick. Now, the other one you can choose, which is banned less, is going to be Garen. So if you can just, I'm telling you, if you're gold or lower, look at me, play Garen and Darius. Which, Darius, if he's not banned, if he is banned, play Garen, you will climb. I promise. They're so powerful, and they're so simple to play. It just allows you to really focus on your macro and focus on other stuff and not have to worry about, your micro and hitting skill shots and stuff like that. Just run at them, and you will win. Okay, so Garen is only banned 4% of the time versus Darius is 35%. So Garen is probably like the low-key sleeper right now at Platinum and lower. A lot of people just don't like playing him because there's not a ton of glory. He has fun moments, just like slamming people with your ult. Like, it can be fun, but he is kind of known for being, a pretty simple champion. And most people just want to play the flashy stuff, right? They want to play the Yasuo or the Riven or whatever. There aren't going to be that many Garen montages out there. There's some probably, but, if you just want to win and you can swallow your pride a little bit and just play something like Garen, at least he does damage, right? If you're someone who just really likes to do damage, at least he does that instead of like a pure tank. But not a ton of glory, so he's not going to be that popular with Garen, but he's very strong too. So very similar outlook. He's like Darius 2.0. Basically, you're going to take Stride Breaker to get closer. Now, he takes Ignite or Teleport because you're already pretty fast with your Q, so it's going to be extremely difficult to kite you to begin with. So you can get a more offensive summoner. I guess Ignite does let you dominate lane faster. I'm not sure what it's way higher win rate than Teleport, so I guess you just play for lane and just hard dominate. And then split push late game. And then it's going to be the same drill, Sterix, Deadman's. Now, he's more likely to want Deadman's second, I believe, because he's a lot better at split pushing than Darius, because he's just way faster with his Q naturally. But you're still going to want both of them. It's just a question of which one you want first. And he does take towers pretty well, too, because his Q is an auto-attack reset. I guess Darius is W, I think. Like, his cripple is an auto-attack reset. But Garen's is going to do more damage, and he's going to drop the towers a little bit faster, I think. So, solid champ. He can get out of stuff. Now, his Q also breaks slows. So if you just hold on to your Q and wait until they use some kind of slow on you to try to kite you, like a Janna W, a Lulu Q, or just whatever, then you can break out of that slow with your Q when you run at him. I believe it does. One of his things breaks slows, and I think it's his Q. It's been a while since I played Garen. But yeah, still, same drill, going to be super strong, same items, just basically Darius 2.0 with a lot less attention on him. And then Camille is going to be definitely at the higher elos, once you get to Masters Plus. But even if you're proficient on her at lower elos, I think she's going to be the queen of top lane, right? Once you start getting into skill champs, she's just going to be phenomenal. And there are a couple of things that contribute to this. Did I close the Lolalytics? Oh, oops, my bad. Let me pull that in here. So, number one, she has excellent gank assist early on. Now, her win rate is going to be lower just because she's harder to play. Like, you can definitely mess her up. And if you fall behind, then it's going to be bad. And she takes a little bit more time. Like, Darius and Garen are going to be strong from, like, level 2, sometimes even level 1 on. You can just kill them with, Darius level 1 with Ghost and just run them down with your bleed. Camille's going to take a bit longer. She is okay early, but she really starts to shine at 1 items, and then at 2 items is when she's off to the races, and she can start beating some of those other bruisers. And her items are pretty expensive. But if you get to that point, she's virtually unstoppable. Her ultimate just makes it really hard for most champions to get away from you unless they have something that can push you through the ult. They're not getting away, so every time that's up, that should be a free kill for your jungler whenever they come top. And then she's really mobile, so she can just zip around the map with her hook shot, which I guess you're not maxing hook shot first, you're maxing Q these days. But you're still going to be able to just zip around the map, split push really heavily, and, get away from ganks, rotate, show up, and flank team fights really well. You have your W, which is really good for trading in lane. It's got some nice range on it for a melee champion, gives you some healing, gives you a bit of extra damage. And then it's really that Q and the true damage component of it that's just nuts. I'm not going to pull it up because I don't want to spend too much time. I do want to try to get through, at least the A and the S and the A tier champs here before we run out of time. But it does a tremendous amount of true damage. Once you get like these 2 items, the second Q does about as much damage as a Cho Chomp. Maybe not quite that much, but that's kind of the meme, is that Camille has a Cho ult on her Q. You just have to delay it and wait a second and then get that true damage, and it just completely annihilates tanks. And there are a lot of tanks, highly mobile tanks out there right now, right? And that's what she's very good against. So she's going to line up pretty well if played properly, if she gets ahead against stuff like Udyr and against stuff like, Skarner, Cho'gath, a lot of those types of champs. If you're good on her, if you can sidestep, like Cho'gath's skill shots, for example, and if you can, just use everything in her kit, she's got all the tools to win almost any matchup if you're really good on her. So I think that she's going to be fantastic. And she's somewhat versatile, right? Like, if you're really far ahead, if you're winning, you can get Trinity Force. But if it is kind of a tougher matchup and you're afraid that you might get blown up, if you're against like a Malphite or something, you can go Divine Sunder just to kind of survive that and last a little bit longer in some attrition fights. And then you have the option of either going Sterix, Ravenous Hunter, or Ravenous Hydra rather, or Death Stance. And then usually you'll get one of those other 3 items near the end. You can get the Chimpunk Chainsword if you really need to, but I'd probably stick with Executioners if you need to get that at all. Hopefully your support's going to get it, or your tank's going to get Thornmail. So you don't have to buy the Grievous Wounds, because you really, really do need your first 2 items. You do not want to take a detour if you can help it at all to get 800 gold for Executioner. She really needs 2 items before she starts to come online. But she's going to be my choice for like mega, hyper carry champion. As you can see, it takes her a while to really take off for the general population, but if you are very strong on her, she is one of the more difficult champions to stop in the game. Okay, and then Cho'gath is the other one who was kind of a meme for a lot of people on the patch notes. Everyone's like, why is he getting nerfed? And he doesn't like get shown a lot of love. I know that LS was scratching his head, and frankly, I kind of was too. I'm like, I never see that champ. What's up with that? But he does have a decent play rate right now, almost 5%, and he still has a 54% win rate, even after the nerf to his E. He's still going to be really strong. And the main thing here is the Turbo Chem Tank is just a phenomenal item on him. And it looks like he can also use the Frostfire Gauntlet pretty well. But it's that Chem Tank. If you don't remember the meta where Cho'gath was getting Righteous Glory and just running up and just chomping the backline, that's basically what this is 2.0. That happened maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. And he's not as oppressive as he was back then, but he's still going to be extremely powerful right now for one of these tanks. As you can see, his win rate just starts going up and up and up as the game progresses. So what's up with Cho? What makes him unique? Why would you play Cho'gath? And you could put Malphite here instead. Malphite does have a decent win rate as well, but I feel like Cho'gath just puts up a better just all-around game and just more consistent contributions. Right? Malphite has a press go button, which is obviously super good, and if you're playing something, if you have like a Yasuo on your team or like a really heavy like all-in burst wombo combo team, yeah, maybe Malphite's a little bit better. But I think Cho is just going to be more consistent in a lot of cases, especially when more people are going to be getting Banshee's Veils. That got a huge buff. That really dumpsters Malphite later on if they get that. And then some of these lethality champions, if they're smart, are going to get Edge of Night as a second or third item. And a lot of AD carries can even get Edge of Night, because most of the good AD carries right now, a lot of their damage comes from their abilities. So they can afford to get Edge of Night, right? So if, like Jin or something, or Misfortune could very easily get Edge of Night if they really wanted it, just because they already do so much damage and the lethality is still going to be pretty good on them. So those bubble type of things are going to be really good. And Malphite's ult is not going to be that great into other tanks, right? If you're ulting a Skarner or an Udyr or, a Darius or something like that, your mileage is going to be limited if they have a Sterix or if they have a ton of resistances. So that's why I think, Malphite is good against squishies and certain comps, but he's really just got one ace up his sleeve, right? And that's it. And then he just kind of doesn't do anything when his ult's off cooldown. Versus Cho'gath still does a lot of stuff, even when his ult is good, but it's not his whole kit. So you can use that Chem Tank to get in close. It does have a 2% higher win rate than Frostfire. That gets you in close enough, apply the slow, and then you start auto-attacking with his E, which is going to apply up to a 50% extra slow. And even after the nerf, if you hit people with 3 E's, which is what you're maxing first, I believe that's going to be usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 18% of their max health plus some flat amount of damage, which is pretty high. So it's a lot of damage on your 3 auto attacks, and it's only a 4-second cooldown. So you can keep cranking this out in team fights once you get that CDR. And remember that the Chem Tank now has 20 ability haste on it, which is going to be really solid. And then he brings other utility too, right? So whenever you start slowing them with your E, you have your knock up with the Q, which does a ton of damage. It's like 300 base damage when that's maxed out. I think you probably max that last, but you know, they can't, tenacity doesn't affect that. It's a knock up. It's great. Pairs well with Samira, pairs well with Yasuo. And then you have that Feral Scream, which is up to a 2-second silence as well. So you have an AoE knock up, AoE silence, really good sustained damage with your E, maximum % health damage, so great against tanks. And then you have your Chomp, which is amazing against squishies, right? If you get close enough to that back line, if you just run in with the Chem Tank, and while they're slow, you just Q them and knock them up, and then just combo them with silence, auto Chomp. They're probably dead if they're squishy, right? So he's good against squishies, good at these sustained fights against tanks. He's just going to be phenomenal in a lot of matchups. So not only good burst, good rundown, good CC, but pretty good damage, and it's magic damage as well, which is really nice because a lot of people are going to be getting Bramble Vest in the top lane and just stacking armor everywhere because really outside of the mid lane, there's not that much magic damage in the game right now. You are seeing some magic damage from junglers, but a lot of your top lane matchups are going to be AD type of champs. And they're not going to want to get that much magic resist. I think you have to go further out of your way to get magic resist. I mean, Spirit Visage is good, but I just think it's nice to have another magic damage type of champ up there, and Cho'gath puts up a respectable amount of magic damage, so they're going to have to buy magic resist probably, versus Darius and Garen and Camille are going to do mostly physical damage. So I just think he fills a very like specific kind of niche up there of respectable AP damage, hard engaged tank with a lot of CC. So I think that he's going to be, I just think he's pretty solid and extremely underrated right now. So anyways, looks weird why he was nerfed, but if you look at his percentages, it was 56% last patch. It's still about 54% this patch. And theoretically, in the meta right now, he's going to be pretty good. A lot of the big boy tanks aren't going to be that great into the Darius and the Garen, and Cho'gath's probably not like insane into those champs. But at least he can kind of hold his own with the utility that he puts up and his damage, and his Chomp is going to get through the resistances and things like that. So he's okay. I think he's going to fare better against like the Darius and the Garen than Malphite is, and I think he's going to do better than something like Maokai is or Ornn. So that's why I have him up in S-Class. Okay, then moving down to A-Class, and once again, you could switch some of these out depending on how good you are with the champ or depending what the elo bracket is. You know, if you're talking Gold and lower, Nasus is probably going to be S-Class. If you're talking Masters Plus, you know, you might see something like Gnar become S-Class, but I think, you know, these are all kind of within the same realm depending on your skill level. Okay, so Irelia is one of the hardest skill champs in the game right now, and Riven's number 2, who's next up in a second. But Irelia just does so much if you're good on her. There's so much outplay potential, especially around the minion wave. You can charge up that passive so that you get a ton of extra damage. You get the healing off of the minion wave. You get the mobility to reposition and dodge different skill shots. You have your ultimate to lock people down. You do a good amount of sustained true damage. You have the outplay potential of your W to block a lot of their damage. You have the potential for an AoE stun. So the name of the game really with Irelia is just, it's so much mobility and just so much outplay potential. So you have all the tools to make it work. And if you're good in top lane, I don't really take this factor into consideration when making the tier list, but you can flex her into different roles. You can even play her in the mid lane right now as Irelia, which is an extra little perk if you're trying to learn her, that she's pretty decent in both roles if you're really good on her. So I still think she's going to be super strong, difficult to play, but her items really haven't been nerfed as much as some of the other ones. She's one of the few Blade of the Ruined King users out there who's very effective. And then I think she gets Trinity after that, which also has not been nerfed. So it is nice that her first 2 core items haven't really been touched versus a lot of the other champs. You know, some of their main items like the Gore Drinker, Sterix package has been nerfed a little bit. So she's still going to be a pretty solid pick. So much higher skill cap than most of the other champs outside of maybe Camille. I think she's probably harder to play than Camille. But definitely can be very good, is extremely vicious in the early game. If people don't respect you having your passive stacked up, you can easily kill somebody level 2 if they stay up on the wave while your passive stacked. So great sort of surprise factor champion. I was going to say noob stomper, but I didn't want to be derogatory, but great if people don't understand your threat level and don't respect it in the top lane. You can snowball super hard off of her. Okay, then Riven's another one who people might have her lower than this, but I think that buff has been tremendous. If we look at the different win rate changes over this patch, this is on League of Graphs. You know, her win rate has gone up 2.5%. Now, it's still not, this says it's not over 50%, but this is looking at all elo brackets versus on Lowalytics here. Then she's got almost a 53% win rate. For a champion that's that hard to play, I mean, she's in the conversation for hardest champion in the game to play. There are not that many other champions on her level in terms of mechanical demands, because not only do you have to worry about managing your cooldowns and figuring out when to use your shield and when to use all the points in your queue, and like you just have all of these very important cooldowns and mobility to manage, so you have a lot of outplay potential, but just the very mechanics of her combo and how you want to perform it can really heavily determine how good you are on Riven, because she has lots of animation cancels. So whenever you're going through your combo, you can either do a slower combo to draw stuff out, or you can do the fast combo, which is what you want to do most of the time. And just go watch a video on it. I'm not an expert on Riven, but you can definitely tell watching someone who knows what they're doing on Riven and not. So I don't know how to do all the animation cancels, and that's kind of like really high-level stuff that you don't have to do with the vast majority of champions in League of Legends. But you can like cancel her animations, but you don't want to cancel your auto attacks while you're weaving in autos in your combo. It's pretty complicated if you're not good on her, but extremely demanding mechanical champ, but still has a 53% win rate, which is higher than Darius. That's when you know a champ's starting to get into OP territory. When it's like that hard, and it's that popular, right? It's 7%. It's not like it's only one tricks playing her. There are some average Joes and average Janes playing this champion right now. So she's probably the most improved champ of this patch, and I called it saying, I don't know if I said she was going to be literally the best, but I said it was a very, very big deal that they lowered the cooldown on her E by 2 seconds, and it is. That was almost, I don't remember what it was before. I think it was like 8 seconds. Now it's 6. It's like 25% cooldown reduction on her E, and her E is so huge because that's her shield, right? That's what buys you the time to get one last combo in, or to get one extra, you know, lifesteal rotation with Gore Drinker and all that stuff. But anyways, very skill intensive, so you're going to lose games while you learn her, so be ready for that if you want to commit to her. But I do think that over time, she is one of the best one-trick champs as well, if not the best, at top lane. So it's worth your time to put into her. She's almost always good, even when she's kind of out of the meta, if you're good on her. There have been so many one-trick popular challenger players over the years that play Riven, you know, rivaled maybe only by Yasuo, and I still think there's probably more Riven players that have been like, you know, gotten kind of famous and are considered really good near the top of Challenger. But anyways, you just want to go conquer with her, and she's still getting the Gore Drinker package, right? Gore Drinker, Ravenous, Hydra. Still going to be a fantastic bargain with her. She scales super well off of AD, and she really likes the health just so that she can't get blown up. And the lifesteal is particularly strong on her just because she has the shield, which scales based on your bonus AD. And so that buys her time to get off more attacks, to get off more lifesteal. So when you're cutting her lifesteal, it's like, that's good. If you have grievous wounds, that's going to help. But she still gets a shield that's not affected by lifesteal. Or that's not affected by grievous wounds, rather. So she has a lot of good options in her kit. And I've never seen a lot of Rivens use Prowler's Claw, but there's, you know, about 1,800 games of 54% win rate where people are using the Prowler's Claw. So I don't know when or why you would do that. I guess it helps with mobility. But most of the time, I would just stick with the lifesteal package. She doesn't get Sterix that much because she already has a pretty big shield, although it's not terrible on her, right? People just don't get it, but it's like 56% as a second item and 64% as a third item. So it's definitely there if you think you're going to get blown up. But then she can also get Black Cleaver, which is going to particularly be a good item on her because she wants the CDR, and Sterix doesn't have the cooldown reduction on it because the CDR is your defense. Like I said before, it's your shield on your E, and it's your offense on your Q. Most of your damage comes from your Q. So, and the auto attacks that work with the Q. But this is really nice because it lowers their armor over time. So it does give you some game against tanks because she doesn't have percentage damage. So against some of these mega tanks that are going to be stacking, like Thorn Mail and just tons and tons of armor, your Cho'gaths, your Malphites and stuff like that. She can have a hard time against them in the early game. One-on-one, she will eventually kill them, but, she is going to be susceptible to CC and things like that in team fights. And if you're trying to carve through one of these, frontline tanks, that can be a problem, right? Versus Cho has that percentage health, and Darius and Garen are just going to have an easier time hacking through tanks. They have true damage in various parts of their kits. So, anyway, she needs Cleaver more than some of those other champs. But she works really, really well. The buff to Ionian boots was low-key really good for her, too. A lot of people have been talking about that in terms of... I guess we're going to go to 40 minutes here. I just can't get it done in 30 just yet. I'm working on it. But we'll see if we can get it done in 40. But that, a lot of people thought about that in terms of enchanters, but that's low-key, really strong on Riven, too, because she really likes the summoner spell haste, so she can get off more ignites or more teleports or whatever she's running. Flash is an extremely powerful ability. She really, really wants Flash for team fights, because that allows you to do your third strike for the little mini knock-up, and then flash in and hit 2 or 3 people with it. So, the huge combo with Riven is usually... you'll go in, I don't know exactly, but she'll go in and stun everybody, I think, with her W, and then do her Q combo and chain that into a knockup. I think she does 1 Q first, and then flashes in, stuns, does the second Q, the third Q, and then just, ults and cleans everyone up. Y'all have seen it before, I'm sure. But having the cooldown on your summoner spells is massive for that. And just the normal CDR is good. So that was definitely a godsend. I mean, look at that, 57% win rate with that boot versus most other boots. So there have definitely been some very fortuitous item changes for her. I mean, obviously the Gore Drinker nerf was bad, but I think getting the extra E is huge. The Ionian boot buff was huge. So very strong champ right now. High skill cap. You're gonna lose a lot of games trying to learn her, but if you have a little bit of practice on her, I think she's super strong right now. Okay, Malphite. I basically talked about him before, so I'll just move over him pretty quickly. He's basically just, that one button. How strong is that button to you, right? It's a very powerful engage tool. It's one of the best engage tools in the game. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be peeled. They either flash it or die most of the time. But it is going to be relatively ineffective against tanks. I mean, it's not like it does 0 damage to tanks, but they're going to be able to absorb a lot of that, especially if they have Asterix. So it is limited, and you really don't do a lot after that. You can spam your Q. You are difficult to kill. Your attack speed debuff is going to be pretty good against some of these melee champs that auto-attack a lot. Remember that Master Yi, though, if you're thinking something like Master Yi, he's not as good as you might believe, just because Master Yi, his auto-attack speed can't be slowed when he's in his ult. So if he is able to alpha strike your ult, which does take some level of skill, because you can be targeted while you're ulting, you just can't be stopped. So, people can still target you. So, Camille can jump your ult, which is what you'll see at, really high levels half the time. Camille is going to ult your ult, and while she's midair, she's untargetable, and she just outplayed you. Right? So, that's why you don't see him a ton at higher levels. It's just because there is some outplay potential on a lot of champions that are meta around that ultimate, but... he's still going to be good, especially at gold and lower. If you're auto-filled and you just know no matchups and you just want to go down, 20 or 30 CS and just be useful in team fights, just have that, game-winning teleport ultimate, in the mid to late game, then he's going to be a solid choice for you. Okay, and then Wukong, I think, is one of the perennial underappreciated top laners out there right now. Still has a high win rate. A lot of people just don't play him, don't respect him. But he brings so much utility to the table. So I don't know about his specific matchups. I guess we can look at it and see here. So in the top lane, what is he weak against? So not a great matchup into Malphite, not a great matchup into Garen and Maokai. But almost every other mainstream champ, he's going to have at least a 50% win rate. And it looks like he's actually pretty good against some of these other ones, right? Like Camille, he's got a 53% win rate against Camille, 54 against Riven, almost 55 against Darius. So he's pretty good against a lot of the other top-end champs, at least statistically, right? Now, not a lot of people play him, and you do have to be careful when you're looking at something like that. It's 4.5%, so it's not like nobody plays him, but it's a lot of specialists that are probably going to be playing him. Anything under 5%, the general population's probably not playing that much. But he has so much in his kit that's good, right? Like Gore Drinker is super popular on him. Yes, it did get nerfed, but yes, it is still going to be strong. But you do have other options, right? You can go Trinity Force, you can go Divine Sunder. I mean, heck, even Blade of the Ruined King and Eclipse can all be pretty reasonable items on him. And then he's a great Sterix user, or Ravenous Hydra, or even Black Cleaver. So he has a lot of different items that can be solid. And he just brings a lot, right? Like his Q crushes armor. Don't forget that increases the damage for your entire team. It's not just extra armor pin for you. It's your AD carry does extra damage, your jungler does extra damage. Anything that does physical damage is going to benefit from your armor crush. So great against tanks. If he gets Cleaver, if you're against 2 or 3 tanks, he can get Cleaver second. That's going to be even more armor shred against the tanks to help your team out. He has the decoy, which can help you outplay like hook champions or just anything that's going to be doing skill shots. And in team fights, sometimes it can be really hard to track that clone, right? If he comes in invisible and ults your back line, and then immediately, I guess he has to use the clone to come in invisible. But if he like jumps out of a bush or something, and then holds on to his invisibility after he ults and then uses the invisibility, you know, everyone's going to blow, you know, their cooldowns, or a lot of people are, on that Wukong to try to peel the AD carry, right? And then he shows up again and ults again. He's really sneaky. He's very mobile after some of the changes to his R, to his E, to his little decoy thing. So he's just mobile, does a lot of damage, has some good utility with his ultimate. It's the knockup, isn't reduced by tenacity, does a ton of damage, armor crush on his Q, lots of different versatile items. He can go more damage. He can go more tankiness. It's an excellent champ, brings a lot to the table. So I think that people are definitely sleeping on Wukong. Really strong champ. At like super high elos and pro and challenger, he probably does have some bad matchups, which is why you almost never see him. But I feel like, I mean, statistically he's very good, and I can tell you anecdotally, I've definitely seen some Wukongs take over the game. So he's not as, you know, absurdly OP as he was maybe 1 or 2 years ago, but he's still going to be pretty legit. And then Renekton's another one, and we're almost out of time. I do want to try to keep it under 30, so I'll just go through these next ones pretty quickly here. But Renekton's still going to be pretty solid. Excellent, just sort of dive in, get your combo off with your Q, with your Gore Drinker. Now his win rate, I think, has gone down a little bit, but not as much as you would think. Yeah, his win rate off of those changes only went down 0.5%, so that's not like that big of a deal. So if you're good on him, he still puts up a ton of early pressure and just a lot of damage in late game team fights, right? Like he's got the heal from his Q, got the Gore Drinker heal, he's got the Sterix, the Conqueror, Ravenous Hunter. So he just puts up a lot of threat, and he can get onto that backline usually pretty easily with his double dash. So you do have to manage his cooldowns correctly and his empowered slashes and stuff like that correctly, but I think he's excellent, especially if you have a duo jungler or some kind of early game jungle and you know you're going to be on strong side, you know they're going to camp you top. He has one of the best gank assists in the early game. You know, just the flash W or the E into W, and it's usually death if a jungler shows up. So really strong champ there. And then I think Fiora is another one that is really underrated, and she can't team fight as well as some of the other ones, and she does require a couple of items just like Camille. You know, her baseline damage is not as high, but she does a lot of true damage. She's very good against tanks. She can definitely run people down late game. She has some really strong outplay potential with her riposte. Off of the double, you can riposte Malphite ults, Cho'gath ults, Darius ults, Garen ults. There's a lot of outplay potential, so if you can do the riposte, that's what makes the difference between a good Fiora and like a not so good Fiora. It's how fast are your reflexes with that riposte, right? Because I feel like if she can riposte properly, you can win almost any matchup. As long as you just take away whatever their best cooldown is, and then you just have a sustained fight with them, you're probably going to win. And there are a couple different items you can go with her. Like, she can go Gore Drinker, but I think people were doing Stride Breaker. I don't know if that's still the meta on her or not. But that was kind of a neat option. I guess people are on the Gore Drinker Ravenous. Stridebreaker's still up there, though. It's about the same. And Stridebreaker's particularly good on her because it's all about repositioning and trying to proc those vitals. So if you get that extra dash to proc a vital and slow him down so you can run around him a little bit more and get those vitals, I think that's pretty strong. So it just kind of depends on the matchup and what you want to do. Lifesteal is very strong on her. And just raw AD is also going to be really good on her because her true damage scales really hard off of your AD. But she's going to be the premier split pusher. I think that she can beat almost anybody. You know, once she gets a lot of items, as long as she can repost their big cooldown, I think she's going to beat almost anybody at 2 or 3 items in a split push. So, really good. Provides a lot of healing. It's going to be a powerhouse champ if you're good. Sorry, I heard some screaming in the other room. I was trying to see what was going on. Then last few here, and we'll keep it under 45. Gragas has been seeing some play in pro, and I know people on the channel really like Gragas. He's a fan favorite, and so I've got him up here as kind of an honorable mention. I guess in pro, if you're really good on him, he can work, and he is a unique champion. You know, his ultimate is a premier engage, probably one of the better engage tools in this list outside of like Malphite. He can bounce people out of position, does some pretty respectable damage, and just his healing with his W, if you just stack just a ton of, you know, resistances on him, then he's just so hard to kill. And he is very mobile with all of the cooldown reduction that's available out there. You know, that is going to be really, really strong on him because his body slam, when he hits somebody, is reduced by a flat 3 seconds. So the lower the base, the more value you get out of that E, kind of like Thresh, when I talk about that in the support tier list video. So I think that is maybe low-key one of the main reasons that he's kind of been coming up. He's only about a 50% win rate in solo queue, and at the end of the day, he usually is just tank. I guess people are building him AP as well. I guess you do have that option on him. You know, you can go some combination of AP and tank. You know, the tank items are a higher win rate, so he can be a turbo Kim tank user. He doesn't have to do that to get it on somebody, but that can, you know, help you be just a little stickier. You know, you can run up with your Kim tank and start beating them, and then after they flash, you can gap close with your E and then bump them back with your ult. So it just gives you a bit more versatility with your cooldowns, and then you can just stick to them easier with Frostfire. So you can do the AP version, but it looks like the tank stuff is going to be higher win rate. But yeah, just unique pieces of CC. He can jump over walls, low cooldown on that E when you max it out. You can peel with him with his R. You can engage with him. So versatile champion, very tanky, puts out a reasonable amount of damage. Has that AP option. Gnar, extremely good in pro. Well, extremely might be a too strong of a word, but good in pro. I know LS hates him, but the truth of the matter is he has a high win rate. At least last time I looked, he has a high win rate, and he's pretty good at banging against these tanks in the top lane, just because he's ranged and he's a tank later on in the game. The problem is you just have to manage the cooldown on his rage bar, and that's why he's a little bit lower on my list. Is just a lot of people just aren't going to be able to manage that properly. But if we're looking at picks, he is the second most picked champion, and he's at 49%. So he did have a positive win rate, but it's basically 50%, you know, so not amazing, but he's okay. Like, Camille is OP. Camille's 55% in pro on 11.2. Gragas is 52, so he's rising up in popularity. Renekton's 47, so he's about on average, right? Aatrox is 49. Ornn is 42. Yikes. But he's not that far off, right? So if you're good on him, he can work really well. He's within, you know, that plus or minus 1 or 2% on 50%. So it really just is a skill matchup in a lot of these matchups. So he's decent. He's hard to pull off in solo queue, but I feel like he's blind pickable, and there aren't really that many matchups where it's like, man, he's going to get destroyed in this matchup outside of maybe Camille. He's going to have some pretty good game just because he's going to be able to kite people with his boomerang, and he's going to put out a lot of harass early. Like, it's really hard to get a good advantage on him in the early game. Like, Darius and Garen are not going to be able to bully him that easily, and he's going to have a lot of utility if you can time those Gnar rages appropriately, especially if you can come in with a teleport at a base, you know, with your Gnar bar full and you're just about ready to go. If you can time that right, he's going to be really strong. And then the last couple of champs here, we've got Nasus. So Nasus, you know, is going to get a lot of farm. He's very good with Divine Sunder right now. It's a Sheen item that also gives him extra lifesteal, doubles down, you know, with his passive. So he doesn't have any of those nerfed items in his kit. He doesn't get Sterix. He doesn't get Gore Drinker. So that's really positive. And yes, he can get bullied out early, but if you can get some protection from your jungler, or if you are in one of these, like, just tank farm off lanes, excellent into something like a Malphite early on, or into a Maokai or something like that. If you get a free lane and he just gets to farm, is going to be very, very difficult to deal with. Once he gets that Sunder and he gets, you know, maybe 400 or 500 stacks, he's so hard to deal with. That ultimate just does so much damage. And Wither is actually a very, very powerful utility spell. Like 5 seconds of massive slow is going to be huge. That slow is going to be huge. So, anyways, I think that he's going to be a strong champ. And then Shin is the last one that I'll mention, and he has kind of fallen off a little bit. I forgot what they nerfed about him. They did nerf something, so sorry, Sammy, if you're watching this. I know Sammy really likes Shin, but he still does have his ultimate, which is going to be strong. I feel like his items kind of fell out of the meta a little bit as well, right? So he likes Sunfire, which has been nerfed numerous times, and he really likes Titanic Hydra, which is just like not that great compared to Gore Drinker on like a value proposition basis. So he's okay. It's just like the items that he gets either have fallen out of the meta a little bit. They're just stronger options. Like he doesn't get Sterix. He's okay, right? Like, so he's not terrible. He does have a really high impact ultimate. So he's all right. It's not that he's bad. It's just that like his items right now are just a little bit subpar, and he has been specifically nerfed a couple of times. It looks like Frostfire is actually like a pretty good option on him though, if people want to try that out. And Kim Tank's a little weird, but you know, you can do that as well. So still good, but just kind of the lower end of tier 2, I think. And the last couple ones, I know we're pretty much over time here. Maokai, I really like him in the support role, but a lot of that is just the kinds of items that he gets and just the kind of utility that the seeds bring to the table. In the top lane, it's a bit of a different ball game. You have to actually fight in the top lane. You have to get CS. So he still brings a lot of CC to the table, which is going to be solid. I don't know. So anyways, he's okay. A lot of CC, but I think he can get bullied early. Volibear, I really wasn't sure. I haven't seen that much Volibear. He does have a high win rate right now. It's like 52%. So you could easily sneak Volibear in here and just sub him out for, I don't know, like Gnar or something like that if you want to. I assume he's going to be a good like Gore Drinker or Stride Breaker. Or actually, you know, probably Kim Tank into maybe a Sterix type of build. I'm not really sure. I know we're out of time, so I'm not going to look all that up. But I think there is a combination of items and runes that can make him pretty strong right now in the top lane. Then you have, you know, some of your other like high skill cap champs that I think are just a little bit less powerful in top lane than Irelia, Riven, and Camille. And that's going to be Yone and Yasuo. I think they're both a bit better in mid lane where they have a shorter lane. They can gap close and fight squishy targets better. I think that they can have a harder time in the early game against some of these tanky bruiser champs like Darius and Garen at a lot of skill brackets. You can outplay them. I mean, you can definitely beat those champions if you're like a Challenger Yasuo player, but I feel like it's a bit tougher in the long lane top, and they're much more likely to get camped, ganked, and just like chain feed when they don't have that shorter lane to work with. So, because they don't have that many great escapes, right? Versus like Camille is going to be able to get away from stuff potentially, and maybe Irelia, you know, Riven can get away. So I just like them a little bit better in mid lane, but if you are extremely good on them and you're careful at managing your aggression, like you're tracking the jungler really well, then they can be good. Aatrox's still going to be pretty decent top lane. All of his items did get nerfed, but he still is a powerhouse. If you do get ahead, if you get those kills, get those resets in team fights, he's still going to be pretty solid. Jace is extremely good if you're very good on him. He's one of the harder champs to really make full use of his kit. Falls off really hard late game. I don't think he has phenomenal itemization. It's okay, but he can get Sterix, I think, but he just feels a little squishy to me compared to some of these other champs that can also bully early. But if you just completely take over the game early and you close out before 25 minutes, he can be strong. Jax, still going to be a powerhouse. I just think that he requires a few more items than some of these other ones, and I would rather just run with if you're looking for like a 2-item power spike champ, I'd just rather run Camille, Irelia, Riven, Fiora. But Jax can be pretty good. Vladimir just got buffed. He can be pretty strong in team fights, but early on it can be a little rough, and everyone's going to have grievous wounds. That's kind of tough. And I think that's pretty much it. So here's the rest of the list. And I know we're kind of out of time, so you can just take a look at it, see what you think. GP has a lot of potential, especially in Pro, but he's extremely hard to leverage his kit. It requires great communication with your team, and you have to hit those barrels properly. So if you're like God mode on GP, he could probably be as high as S, but I just don't see it a lot with GPs on my team, even people that have a lot of games on him. So he's really hard to play, but can be very rewarding if you're good on him. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you next time.